for the very special moment in CosmoQuest Hangoutathon. I see a tail.
I'm coming. Hello, VC. All right. I hope you guys can hear me.
We can.
10 years ago, last Sunday, so we're a little late, my now husband and I walked into the shelter just outside of Edwardsville. It was Metro East Humane Society, and saw this little goober. So since it happened around this time, we thought we would celebrate. She's actually 14 years old, but this is her 10-year gotcha day anniversary. And so she still wears the boots, Pamela, that you donated to us, the snow boots, because you're like, oh, you're moving to New Hampshire. So, and this goober who wants to steal the show is Luna, who we adopted here almost 5 years ago. And I thought we can just say happy gotcha day to my old lady.
She's such a good girl.
Ooh, here we go. We have a pot pie and a candle. I'm not singing. Unless you want to sing, Tim. His head back there. He's like, nope, not for me.
I'm just a cameraman.
All right. Oh, wow, this is like a gigantic cookie. Okay. We're gonna give you a little bit and see. Happy birthday / gotcha day. Oh. You're not so sure? You love eating everything. There you go. Come on.
The first food she hasn't eaten.
It's a little hard, I think. She's like, I'm gonna work on it. No? She will not be deterred. She will. Oh, there it goes. Now it's all crumbly. I don't know if Luna's gonna like it. You want some, Luna? Luna's even pickier. So happy birthday! All right, I'm gonna run upstairs and join you in just a minute.
All right. So this is going to be listening to the universe. Everything you wanted to know about radio astronomy. And Nicole has actually worked on building radio telescopes. And what is starting to amaze me is, like, when she was in graduate school, she was working on developing technologies that would eventually feed into the development of the SKA, which still isn't done. Let me switch our view back to gallery view.
I forgot just how tired she is at this time of night.
Yeah, old dog.
She's just
is
like,
old.
Nope. I know, she's 14. I can't believe it. Yeah. At least that's the estimate. Because they estimated her age at 4 at Metro East. So yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for indulging my dog mom.
Always.
My dog mom moment.
You know I'm a dog mom.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Macy's a sweetheart, and Luna, I love that your black dog is named after a glowing object.
I did not name her. That was actually her name. When we found her, that was she was living with a family, and they'd had some issues because with the very small children around their child, it was fine, but when their child's little friends came around, it was overwhelming for the dog. Yeah. So that was her name. That was one of those, like, oh, she's perfect for us. She's even named Luna. Yeah.
I got a adopted horse that came with the name Quantum Leap. So the universe just sometimes fates things.
Oh my gosh. All right. Thank you all for indulging my little dog celebration. So
It It is glorious. It is glorious. So what I was saying while you were transitioning locations is this topic is reminding me. So first of all, you had to be here because you have worked on radio data. You have helped build radio arrays. And you were working on technology that was a prototype for technology for the square kilometer array, which still isn't done.
I worked on a project called PAPER with the acronym, the Precision Array for Probing the Epoch of Reionization. Um, and the it was a field of fairly simple dipoles. Again, I despite having a dish and despite having a love of big dishes, which is what you think of when you think of radio
Yeah.
astronomy, I tend to work in dipole land. I just kept going lower and lower
Which are just
frequency
spiky
throughout my
bits.
career. Yeah. So these dipole arrays, and the goal of that project was to look for the signatures of neutral hydrogen from the very early universe, from the days when before the first stars and galaxies really started to light up the universe and ionize that hydrogen so it was no longer glowing. And so yeah, one of the so our we did a lot of testing in Green Bank, West Virginia. So I spent a lot of time at the Green Bank Observatory in grad school. Not using the I have used the GBT, but only a couple times. It was mostly there working on this prototype paper. And yeah, so and then the main array, the main paper array went to South Africa at the site, one of the sites of the Square Kilometer Array. And so I got to see Cat 7, but I think it was just seven dishes, was seven dishes they had as the prototype out there when I was there in 2010. So yeah, paper is no more. It has been superseded. A lot of the people went on to make Hera. Hang on a
Mm.
sec.
Hera the spacecraft or Hera something else?
Hera something else, the Hydrogen
Okay,
Epic of Reionization Array.
that makes more sense.
And so our little dipoles turned into like more like dishes. We ended up going they ended up going in a sort of dish direction anyway. But I can still screen share
Yeah.
the pictures. So they're still back at that site. It's kind of these wire mesh dishes. But it's a very specific instrument. And there's the team. It's a very specific instrument to do this work. And it's not an imaging array. It's made specifically for this particular signal and doing detection really in Fourier space. We can get all geeky about that if we if we want to go in that direction. But anyway, that's where I started. Actually, I started using the very long baseline array, which was 10 telescopes. Now I think it's even more. Well, it was 10 originally identical telescopes, radio telescopes around North America, to do imaging of jets from supermassive black holes. That was the REU project I found myself in as an undergrad. Loved it.
At Haystack
And
Observatory
then
in my
that's
hometown where I
right.
worked for high school.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. It's
Yeah.
40 minutes away now. Yeah, at Haystack Observatory, and then I worked at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory in Socorro for 2 summers, and then I went on. So I started in the millimeter regime, and then I kind of trickled down in frequency to this low frequency instrumentation. Um, but in grad school is also when I caught the SciComm and teaching bug, and so went in that direction. But still love radio telescopes to this day. And apparently my career has slid even further down in frequency, because the project that I'm involved in now is Radio Jove, which is at, oh my gosh, what frequency are we even at right now? I can't even brain. 20 megahertz. Um, so super low frequency dipoles to pick up emissions from Jupiter and the sun.
Now, I don't know if you'll remember this. At what rough signpost did they think that reionization started when you were in graduate school? Was it around 100 million years, 500 million years? Do you remember?
I don't remember if there was like a favored model at the time. It was kind of, I mean, it was a theorist playground. They were
Yeah,
just
yeah.
waiting. And Hera is, I think and some other projects like LOFAR are starting to put limits on that. So they still haven't quite
Yeah.
gotten to that. That is a very long-term project, a very hard thing to do. We one of the PIs of the project was Don Backer, who was an astronomer and just a very well-known radio astronomer at Berkeley, and he would always say, "Well, if it was easy, someone would have done it already."
It's true. And
Yeah.
one of the wild things is it turns out our universe reionized a lot earlier than we thought.
Hmm.
And so what I'm really enjoying right now is like when I was in grad school 10 million years ago, we considered high redshift like 1. And now high redshift is like 6. And so where we consider early in the universe has changed, where we consider far away has changed as our technology has gotten better. And we're seeing innovations at every wavelength. But in some ways, the radio innovations are more interesting because things like being able to combine signals from multiple telescopes that are separated by large distances, we've been doing for forever. And how we do that has gotten more efficient, but it hasn't fundamentally changed. But our ability to construct things we couldn't construct before and
Hmm.
process more things simultaneously than before have both gone in ways I never expected. What for you have been the greatest surprises in what radio dishes can do and didn't end up doing?
The biggest, I don't know if it's a surprise, but it was definitely when I recognized it, and people are starting to recognize it. I have to dig up the article link later. Is that radio astronomy is becoming so much more accessible for amateur astronomers.
Yes.
That's the thing that really is exciting to me, because when I was in grad school, I did get to meet folks from the Society for Amateur Radio Astronomers and realized, oh my God, these people are wizards,
Yes.
to be able to construct radio things capable of radio astronomy in their spare time. I mean, let's be honest, it's kind of where radio astronomy got its start, right? Or at least its second start. Um, so radio waves were detected from the Milky Way in 1933 by Carl Jansky, serendipitously at Bell Labs. But it wasn't until Grote Reber,
Yeah.
um, who was an engineer by day, in his, at nighttime in like a field. It was either across the street or in his backyard. I don't remember exactly where, but built the first radio dish and started doing the first maps of the Milky Way and started doing the first radio astronomy. So radio astronomy, obviously, has gotten bigger. And now there are huge international collaborations like the Square Kilometer Array and like ALMA. Radio astronomy, even in my time, has moved from, being accessible to a small group of professional
Yeah.
astronomers, now to most professional astronomers. The
Yeah.
data products that are created are much more accessible, even in the professional realm. But what's happening now, are these software-defined radios that are making, the receiving end, a inexpensive, easy to set up device. And so amateur radio astronomy is experiencing this renaissance, and that's really exciting. So Matthew, you're here. You have been working on the Radio Jove a little bit. I don't know if you want to talk about um, particularly the somewhat swashbuckling aspect that we are currently doing, or you're really currently doing. I've been just kind of like hovering over and watching, but Matthew has been constructing a calibrator that was developed by like one of the Radio Jove project people who is a passionate amateur astronomer. I don't even like the word amateur
No.
because of the connotations of like, but amateur in the original sense of the word, like for
Volunteer is the
passion.
word I like.
Yeah, volunteer. Yeah. So Matthew, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about what you're doing with that.
Yeah, so we're putting together a wideband calibrator as a step up from the old one we had, I guess. And I'm actually in the office where we've been working on it for the past few weeks. It's not in here, it's in a different lab,
Mhm.
which is unfortunately locked at the moment. But
Yeah.
we've been constructing this calibrator since last semester. It's coming together pretty nice. It's kind of just been this. We have a few images like, does this wire go here? Yeah, this is it's been good though, and trying to figure it out. We just recently were soldering together some of the 5 volt and 12 volt boards that we need for some of the parts. And it's really coming together, and we just need to. I think there's part of the box we have to still cut for the LCD display, but it's coming together.
Yeah, yeah. We so last fall, a year ago, I tried to get Mike on, but he's off doing grad student things. Um so actually well this we got this kit in 2019. Radio Jove has been around for more than 20 years, making this it accessible radio telescope. They send you the antenna, which they can send it pre-built, or they can put it together yourself. Or the first version we did have some of my students at the time put it together with a group of high school students as an
Oh,
after
wow.
school project. Oh, it's so fun. Um, yeah, so my students did the soldering and the drilling and the things, the power tool, the tools that we weren't, allowed to let the high school students do, but they really got the kids into every aspect of building it. Um, and you get the rest of your parts at hardware store. We built the first two out of PVC. PVC does not last super long at a windy location. Not even that windy, just a little windy, and it still broke. Um,
No.
and so, we had COVID and, things happened. So Mike Rochette was the first one to put out the new version of the antenna with steel poles. So it's an actual permanent installation at our college observatory. But the big jump up in the last couple of years. So when I started, and for most of its history, Radio Jove had a single channel receiver. So one frequency, you get this little line and it goes boop, and it goes boop. And most of the boops are, human interference, right? Human made interference. Some of the boops are solar flares, and some of the boops, or some of the bleh, are Jupiter. It's less boopy, it's more blah. Um, um, but these software-defined radios allow them to now do wideband, much wider band. So it was easy to calibrate a single channel receiver. You have a noise source that is, you know exactly what power output it's putting out at 20 megahertz, and it's great. And that's your calibrator. So this getting a stable calibrator across the whole frequency band, I forget what it is. It's 15 to 22 or something like that. Um, is a challenge, and this was designed and built again by the volunteer group running it, or who are deeply involved. So there's some NASA people who are involved, and then there's some people who have just been doing this for years, who are either building the software or designing this calibrator. So because it's so very beta, it's so very beta that we're trying to piece together, and we're definitely in the realm of do you think this will work? Thankfully, our lab manager and instructor was an electrical engineer in her previous careers. We run to her a lot with questions of, is this completely crazy? Do you think we can do this to get the power here? So yeah, it's been a little bit of slow. We finally got all the parts at the very end of the spring semester. So building really started in earnest this semester. Um, yeah, you haven't had a whole lot of experience with the data, Matthew, but do you want to talk about what kind of experiences we've had taking the data so far?
Yeah, it's been a little difficult with where our lab is currently, just because we're in an area where there's a lot of telephone poles. We think that those are interfering with that. I volunteered that we get a freshman to kick the telephone pole to test for us, but um,
No,
yeah,
you yourself kicked the
yeah, I
telephone
volunteered first.
pole.
Yeah.
Wait,
Well, so
okay,
this
so I
actually
have to
came up in the
ask,
user telecon.
telephone poles are big. What
Mhm.
does explain kicking a telephone pole? Because I'm not seeing, like, do you move the charged particles enough to change the electric field or something?
The theory is, and I don't know if this was suggested, and I don't know if anyone's actually tested this or if from experience or if they were just speculating, but the transformer on the telephone pole is a serious source of radio interference. And the idea was if you whack it, it was not kick, it was sledgehammer. We do not have a sledgehammer, and I was
Yes,
not
correct.
about, I refused to let Matthew go out to the telephone pole with a sledgehammer. Because I like him and I don't want him getting in trouble. Um, but the suggestion was if you whack it hard enough, it should jitter the components in it, which would cause it to, kind of like jitter the signal that you might be able to see and be able to tell that, yes, it is the transformer creating this interference. So Matthew actually did go out and kick it as hard as he could, and we didn't see
Is your foot
anything.
okay?
Yeah, yeah, it was good. It's for science. It's for science.
Yeah, yeah.
I
What I did manage to work in to our lab budget, because I don't know how, is we were going to build. So we have the permanent array at that site, which again with a nearby transformer is not great, but
Yeah.
it's on our campus and it's easy to get to. And there is a building there where that houses our telescopes, and so we can house a receiver there and the laptops and everything. So it's a nice permanent site. So the idea is, so we're gonna get parts to build a second one. And the parts on that end are really cheap. So we managed to get that into our lab budget to develop that. So that we have a traveling one. So we want to kind of test everything. And this is kind of what we did when I was in graduate school. This was, we tested our prototype in Green Bank because it was only a 2.5 hour drive away. And I was out there once a week for several years, and we'd, go through everything before deploying in the crew in South Africa at the very beginning of the SKA site. There was a building, but we slept in trailers because the building just had like a kitchen, I think. So before you go out to the middle of nowhere, you have, actually do as much testing as you can. So Rich Bradley at the NRAO was my thesis advisor, and he's electrical engineer also. And that was very much the ethos in his lab is you test the heck out of it. You understand your instrument. And the better you understand your instrument, the better your science is going to be at the end of the day. So we're kind of continuing that model by having a campus one we can do lots of things with and test, and then we can take our, portable one, say up northern New Hampshire, to a quieter spot and see if we can actually get better data.
Now I do want to take a step back for a moment because I think a lot of people have a reasonable idea of where optical light comes from.
Mhm.
A light bulb heats up, it gets bright. A neon light, you run electricity through it, the atoms get excited, emit light. Stars, you watch nuclear reactions create photons that end up at a wavelength we can see by the time they exit a star. But radio emission, which is also photons with a very different
Mhm.
wavelength, they are created by very different kinds of phenomena.
Mhm.
Do you want to explain like why the Jovian system, for instance, is something that is a plague on some form of radio astronomers and a joy for other kinds of radio astronomers?
Yeah, so humanity, has always done optical astronomy because, stars give off light and we have eyeball, well, and the sun, and we probably evolved because of that. Um, Not a lot of, and that's because of the heat of the object is such that the photons are in that range for stars, which is great. Not a lot of things there's a lot of stars, so not a lot of other things will give off that thermal, obviously thermal radio energy. Um, so a lot of the ways in which we see things in the universe that give off radio light are non-thermal sources, so other mechanisms. Um, it comes down to, I think this comes from a lecture from my modern physics class. If you have an electron, it makes an electric field, right? You have an electron that's moving, now you have an electric field and a magnetic field. You have an electron that's accelerating, either by changing speed or direction. Now you have the capability to have the magnetic field and the electric field change and generate light, electromagnetic radiation. So a lot of what we see is from the rotation of electrons around magnetic field lines for the radio Jove at least. It's called cyclotron emission. Typically, radio astronomers, when we're looking at this kind of emission, at least when I was doing extragalactic stuff from black hole, just from black holes, it was moving relativistically, and then it was called synchrotron radiation. So you'll hear synchrotron more than cyclotron, but I think the ones we're looking at are a bit slower. So these are these weird phenomena that we don't have another way to probe, that we're able to probe with these telescopes. So Carl Jansky, if you never heard the story, he was a radio engineer in Holmdel. No, not Holmdel. Yeah, I think it was near Holmdel, New Jersey, where he was tasked with studying the source of radio static that was interfering with radio emissions for, I think they were looking at intercontinental phone systems or radio emissions across continents. And he discovered, he worked at it and discovered that, noticed, I mean, this is so cool. He noticed that one of the signals was periodic, but it wasn't 24 hours. It was 23 hours, 56 minutes. And that's very strange. And he looked into that and learned that that's the period of rotation around the sky for the stars, not the sun. So, he was not an astronomer. He came across that and was able to pinpoint that it was actually coming from the galaxy and these high energy particles
I'm going
moving
to interrupt
through
you
the
for a
galaxy's
moment.
magnetic field. Yeah,
We are at
go for it.
$3,663, which is a palindrome, and it is excellent.
Yes.
And I am proud of all of you. You have done amazing things. You are awesome. We are now less than $2,000 away from our goal to hit our minimum. We need to get there this weekend amount. It is amazing. I am sorry to cut you off. I needed to share joy.
No, please do.
I needed to share joy. And okay, so you were talking about the awesome
Is this the
genius.
first time you've hit a palindrome? No, is this the first
This is
time
the
you've hit a
first time
palindrome
this
today?
hangout-a-thon that we've had a palindrome. And
Hurrah.
this is we've had this super strange phenomena where I say we are like $7 away from a palindrome. We are $15 away from a palindrome. And someone who is wonderful but hates palindromes will donate $45, which is far too much and excellent. And we miss the palindrome, and it is excellent, but palindromes. I am obsessed. I'm sorry.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. You and Phil Plait have that in common because he's always got some weird number stuff in his newsletter.
All right, so back to the awesome that is the genius of Jansky.
Yeah. Oh, so so he figured that out. It was like a New York Times front page article. Cosmic signals from space. That did not get really didn't get any scientific follow-up. And so it wasn't until so Grote Reber is my favorite citizen scientist.
Yes.
He was like I said, he was living in Wheaton, Illinois, and working as an engineer. And he had heard about, I think he'd heard about Jansky's work and decided to build a telescope. In fact, I even found a quote from him from a history that was I think this was from a talk by Ken Kellerman, who's at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory. And it was, he literally said, "So I consulted with myself and decided to build a dish." Like, like I consulted with myself. That makes me so happy for some reason.
Fair.
So he's the one who really extended that work in the late 1930s. And if I remember the story, I know I've heard a lot of Grote Reber stories over the years. I did not ever meet him, but I've met a lot of people in Green Bank who did. And one where was I going with this? My brain just like went in the wrong direction. No, I just lost my train of thought.
So I'm trying to find a picture of Grote Reber and his
oh,
telescope
I know.
because it was gorgeous and had shrubbery equally spaced all around it. And it was just like he even landscaped it.
That's amazing. So I know where I was going. This one of the stories I heard was that the editor of either the Astronomical Journal or the Astrophysical Journal, one of the main astronomy journals, had to like visit his house to be like, "What is this?" Because the astronomers didn't understand what he was doing.
Yeah.
And his telescope is still around today. Matthew, you want to talk a little bit about your experience in Green Bank?
Yes. So thanks to Dr. G. She introduced me to this program that Dr. Reichard, he works at the University of North Carolina. He runs every single year. He brings like a dozen or so undergraduates to this program called Educational Research in Radio Astronomy, or RIRA for short. It's this week-long program where you get to tour all the facilities at the Green Bank Observatory, and you get to work on a bunch of little projects they have this 40-foot mini radio astronomy telescope. And there's a lot of like the older controls. They have a lot more automated stuff these days, but we got to use that. And one of the touring things was the radio telescope that Grote Reber built in his backyard. This is the very front of the facility. So we got a tour of the facility. But during my time there, we got to work on like 3 or 4 mini projects. So for one of them was we got to gather data using our 40-foot telescope to map out part of the Milky Way galaxy. It was really, really cool. I think it was like 25% we got. We were able to successfully map out. We had to use some Python code to program it with our some of the redshifted data. It was an amazing time, amazing experience. I have no complaints about it. It was one of the best weeks of my life.
I was incredibly happy when when I sent that around and you were like on it. You're like, yes, I'm applying. This is great. Yeah, because Grote Reaper's telescope was reconstructed at the entrance to the facility, and so you can go see it.
And I'm
You can
bringing a
go see it
picture
now.
of the bottom of the telescope with the shrubbery on screen
Oh, I
so
see
everyone
it.
can enjoy. Sorry.
Oh yeah, that looks like the Green Bank setup, I think.
This, well, that's Grota Reba in the picture. So this
Yeah,
is, okay.
he was there when I think he was there when they installed it.
Okay. Okay. This is a
Yeah,
picture
yeah, yeah,
from the NRAO site.
yeah.
Oh, it is in Green
That
Bank. You're
might
right.
be
It is in
Green
Green
Bank.
Bank. To reassemble his radio telescope built in 1937 in Illinois. Okay, my bad. My bad.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Still
So
excited
okay, so
about
the
the shrubbery.
shrubbery was not him. That was definitely yeah. There's the NRAO shrubbery then.
I've been streaming for many hours.
Woo! Yeah,
And
Green Bank is a magical place if you ever get a chance to visit. I spent a lot of time there as a grad student. Well, I visited as actually when I was your age, Matt. Uh, we took a drive down from my college in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, like homie, woo. Um, uh, sorry, I'm even wearing the fraternity shirt from my husband. The Mu Theta chapter of that fraternity has a decent amount of physics and astronomy majors in it. Anyway, they still I think make a trip down to Green Bank every few years. So I went down, we took a bunch of undergrads in a van and drive down to Green Bank. And we used the 40-foot telescope too. Although it was even less automated then. You got to push a button. I had to turn a dial and multiple
Yes.
dials at once. Um, but anyway, spent a lot of time there. It has a rich history, and working there, I got to learn from some of the people who were there, not the very beginning, but people who remember, who worked with those who started it at least, and hear all their stories. So it has such a rich history. It's gorgeously isolated. And I finally got to go back in 2022, so 2 years ago now, as the organizers of PhysCon, which is a every 3 years conference for physics undergraduates. It's a physics congress of Sigma Pi Sigma, the Honor Society, and Society of Physics Students, the professional society for undergraduate physicists. We put a whole bunch of people on a bus and took a day off before the conference to go to Green Bank, and I hadn't been there in like however many years. I think it had been 10 years. So I got to run around again. 10 years has changed a lot in terms of human-made devices that make radio waves. And, telling students that, there's not going to be any internet there, that there's no Wi-Fi, or like, oh, but there's this one computer lab where you can get internet. They're like, cool, and they were expecting it to be Wi-Fi. It's like, no, you can log on to the computer and use the internet. But so you spent a week out there too, so it's different.
Yeah, I had no idea what Ethernet cables were. So I had no idea you could just plug the Wi-Fi into your computer.
you sweet summer
Oh, this is my
child.
life now. This is my life. Every year I get older and less relevant.
So I mean, the surreal thing to me is there are college students now who can't remember a time without cell phones. How do they function at radio quiet facilities?
There was a little bit of worry, right? So you did a whole week. I only saw them do an overnight. How
Yeah,
did you feel doing a week?
it was a very surreal experience. I mean, you never know how much you're really connected to the internet and your devices until you're out in Green Bank and there's just nothing. It's just complete silence or radio silence. But
Literally.
uh, yeah, but it was great. I mean, I've never been so disconnected, but it was great. You just got to focus on your research and just
Mhm.
plug through it and not sleep for a week.
Yeah, they keep you very busy. They because you guys are observing at night and doing stuff during the day. You're using the 20-meter telescope too, the old Navy telescope.
Yes, yeah.
Did you do pulsars with that?
We did. Yes, we got to map out some of the rotational speeds of some of the pulsars. It was very difficult to do. We had very narrow windows. We had to be up at like 3 in the morning to get a couple of them, but it was definitely worth it.
Yeah, it's like it's a bit of a boot camp for radio astronomy. They really work you
That's
for that week.
absolutely amazing.
Yeah. The overnight I did with the students, they were a little freaked out. One of them was like, I need music to sleep. I'm like, you can keep it in airplane mode and play, play your music in the dorm. Just don't do it once we cross the barrier to the
But do
telescopes.
they like
They were
even
very,
download anything to their computer, to their phones? Because I know most people are now using Pandora and Spotify and music services versus buying
true.
albums.
True. Yeah, I don't actually know. I didn't follow up. We also had a fire alarm wake us up in the middle of the night, so nobody got much sleep.
That can happen to anyone.
Yeah.
Oh,
Me
yeah.
wanting to time pulsars. Yes. The telescope that you used to do that was with it's actually called Skynet, which is a network of telescopes that are used. I don't know how widely open they are. I know a lot of educators have access to Skynet. I don't know if that's like a publicly available thing. Um, but they have robotic telescopes, mostly um, optical, but the I know the old 20-meter. No, sorry, 20-meter? Is it 20-meter? I can't remember.
Yes,
It's
it's
20-meter.
20.
Okay. Okay, yeah. The old it we just called it the old Navy telescope. It wasn't in use when I was there. The Navy used it for tracking stuff. That got turned into this research and education tool. So
We are at $4,315, which is not a palindrome, and I don't care. That was loud. Sorry.
I would loudly cheer if there wasn't tiny humans sleeping in the next room.
That is fair.
I was like, oh right, tiny humans, tiny human, not my tiny human, by the way.
No, you have tiny doggos.
I have less tiny doggos. I just also have a house that is rather full of people in general.
I understand that. I
It
understand that.
happens.
Okay, so on that joyful note, we are running out of time. Um, we have basically 5 minutes left. Um, there's so much stuff about radio astronomy we didn't touch on. Like my favorite random fact, and someone got a Nobel Prize for this, is the 20 centimeter line is caused by the random moment where an electron decides, nope, flip.
Hmm.
And that very rare fine structure transition where depending on how the electron is aligned in hydrogen, it has a slightly different energy level. And
Yeah.
in gas where collisions happen, this transition never gets the chance to happen. So it's only in diffuse
Hmm.
gas that you see these electrons periodically going, and I flip. And it happens in such large numbers because our universe is so vast. And so the
Yeah.
vastness of space allows random, rare, unassaulted electrons to change their mind about how they would like to be oriented in this universe. And this is an analogy for something, and I leave it for all of you to decide what. There's so much exciting stuff out there. What factoids about radio astronomy would the two of you like to leave our audience with?
You have one, Matt?
I do not off the top of my head.
Okay. I will because we mentioned it earlier and we said we'd get to it and we didn't. The pigeon poop. Um, the the basically what's been often been called the echo of the Big Bang, the cosmic microwave background, is a microwave signal from when the universe was only 380,000 years old. Um, And that was predicted and beginning to be sought after by astronomers. While down the road, another set of astronomers working at Bell Labs were looking to particularly, I think, just get to like the lowest noise possible on their horn antenna for calibration type measurements. And these two astronomers, Penzias and Wilson, Arno Penzias, I think, died fairly recently.
Yeah.
And Robert Wilson, who I got to meet briefly at Green Bank and hear the story from him, they kept noticing this signal, this static, this noise that wouldn't go away and was in every direction they looked, which was really frustrating. And they tried all kinds of things to tested their instrument in different ways to the point where they were cleaning the pigeon poop out of it. This is a horn antenna. So it's a nice little place for pigeons to chill out, thinking that substance might have something to do with it. They had stumbled upon, and they finally, they didn't give up. Like with Jansky, with this weird signal, they didn't give up. And finally, when talking to the right group, just found out, oh, this was the thing you predicted, that you were starting to build a thing to detect. Oops. So that antenna has recently been actually saved from demolition in Holmdel, New Jersey, because it is at the former site of Bell Labs, and they're turning it into a park. And there was a whole campaign to save it, mostly by local folks, but it obviously extended into the radio astronomy community. So that's going to be a telescope that you can visit in New Jersey. So anyway, the pigeon poop story is among my favorite. Yeah, nothing else makes sense. Maybe the droppings were dielectric, is exactly like a white dielectric is how they described it. But one of my Green Bank stories is I was in my room at the dorm, and I was on Instant Messenger, so I had my laptop plugged into the Ethernet on Instant Messenger, and Paul Reese, who I think he's still at NASA, who was a grad student at the time, IMs me in capital letters, "Get to the lounge. Bob Wilson's telling the pigeon poop story." So like I immediately like ran down to the Drake Lounge is what it's called. Because that's where Frank Drake did his SETI thing. There's so much history there. Yeah, and he was I got to catch the tail end of that story, but he was working on some of the millimeter very long baseline interferometry that eventually got us the first images of supermassive black holes. So he was actually working, I think, with those folks at the time. So yeah.
It's amazing. Are you going to be with us more tomorrow, Matthew and Noisy?
Don't think so.
Okay.
I didn't see it on the schedule.
All right. You've been amazing today. And I just want to
I have a lot of grading to do, and I really need to do it. So
I remember
yeah.
those days. You're living the dream. You're living the dream, Miss Associate Professor. Dr. Miss Associate Professor. And I just have to say, I've giggled on the inside every time he called you Dr. G, because that's what my students used to call me. And
yeah.
And it's just brings me joy.
Oh, yeah, Galucci's too long. I get Dr. G, I get Prof G. I have told them that you can call me Nicole if you really want to, but it doesn't. Yeah, the St. A's culture is kind of formal, so not a lot of that. I will harass you after you graduate to call me Nicole. So I will harass you to call me Nicole. Yeah, once you graduate.
So,
okay, Dr. G.
This is so in all honesty, I am now 50 years old. My undergraduate advisor's name was Horace Smith. I always called him Dr. Smith. I know I can call him Horace. He's the most delightful human. He is still out there in my life. I don't think I've ever actually been able to say Horace because he is still Dr. Smith. So some things do get ingrained.
Yes.
and that's okay.
Yeah, David Wolf is out there still doing stuff at AAPT, I think. He had that conversation with me at a conference. He's like, you can call me David. I'm like, I'm trying, but you're still Dr. Wolf. I'm trying.
All right. This has been glorious. Up next is going to be a premiere of this week's EVSN. We're so sorry, Patreon people. We didn't get it to you very early. I don't know if we got it to you at all yet. It's just going to be played now. It's not going to go on YouTube public yet. So it's special for you and for the Patreons who will get it. And then the rest of you will get it like Tuesday. I don't know. We haven't figured this out yet. Yeah. So we're about to show you the newest episode of EVSN. I'm going to have to rejigger all the technology. So I am going to very awkwardly, because this is the only way I do things this time of day, transition us over to the interstitials. I will see you all in a few moments.